Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the meeting of the Standards Committee, Tuesday, 5th of October 2021. I'll ask my clerk, Mr. Hampton, to deal with any housekeeping for the meeting.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everybody. Please note that this meeting of the Standards Committee is being recorded by the Council and will be published on the Council website for a minimum of 6 months. Please could everybody present follow the following ground rules. Only speak when invited to by the Chairman. Please use your desk microphones when speaking, and please mute or turn off your microphone when you have finished speaking. If accessing the meeting via Teams, always turn on your video function when invited to speak and state your name. If accessing via Teams and you would like to speak, please use the raise your hand function in the Teams window. For those of us in the room, please note that if the fire alarm sounds, we should exit the building by the nearest fire exit and assemble on the ground floor of the multi-storey car park. And finally, Chairman, would members please ensure that background noise is kept to a minimum and that mobile phones and other devices are turned off or switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hampton. If we go to item 1, apologies, Mr. Hampton. Are there any apologies for the meeting?
Thank you, Chairman. We have apologies from Councillor Jones.
Thank you. And item 2, substitute members. Mr. Hampton, are there any substitute members for the meeting?
Yes, Chairman. Councillor Edwards is acting as a substitute for Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards, for coming this evening. Hope you're welcome. Item 3, election of Vice Chairman. I would like to advise all members that the Councillor Brooks, Vice Chairman, has resigned from the committee, and he's asked me to read out a statement this evening. As a consequence of my role as Director of 3 arm's-length BCP Council companies, as well as the gearing up of the High Street and District-centred strategy across the conurbation, approved by Cabinet on 29th of September, it is only right for me to stand down from this committee. To focus on these important areas of the Council business, I am pleased to have played a part in the helping to achieve the adoption of the Local Government Association's new Code of Conduct for councillors in June, and note the slight adjustments you'll be making today to the code. I wish you well in your deliberations on matters that come before you. And I would like just to note, for the record, Standards Committee's thanks for Councillor's work and dedication as Vice Chair of the Standards Committee. Therefore, I go to the election of Vice Chair. We now need to elect a new Vice Chairman for the remainder of the 2021-22 municipal year. May I please hear nominations for the position of Vice Chair, please? Councillor Stribley.
Chairman, thank you for that. I'd be pleased to nominate Councillor Derek Borthwick.
Thank you. I'd like to second that, please. Are there any other nominations? No? Thank you. We have Councillor Borthwick proposed and seconded. I therefore declare that Councillor Borthwick is duly appointed as Vice Chair, and I would like to be the first to congratulate Councillor Borthwick on behalf of the whole committee and welcome him to the new role. Councillor Borthwick, would you like to address the committee?
I'd like to thank all the members of any party for electing me as Vice Chairman as much as I can, and you'll get 100% from me, irrespective of who, whether they're Conservatives, Independents or anything else. I would treat everybody exactly as I would do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Borthwick. Very good words. Thank you. We move to item 4, declarations of interest. Do members have any declarations of interest? No? Okay, thank you, members, for your declarations. Item 5, confirmation of minutes. May I please seek members' approval for the confirmation of the 13th of July minutes as a true record of the meeting? Thank you, members.
No, Chairman, I wish to speak.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Stribley.
Chairman, the apologies are not accurate. I was taken very ill that morning. I didn't send any apologies.
Okay, we'll have to make that amendment then. Richard?
Sorry, they may have been reported on your behalf, I think, for that meeting. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, move to item 7, Local Government Association revision to the Model Code of Conduct for Councillors. The committee is asked to consider the challenges identified in the appendix to the report and is asked to recommend the changes to full council for adoption. Mr. Jones, can you please take us through the report regarding the changes to the Code of Conduct, which can be found at pages 18 and pages 23 to 26, and also the flowchart amendments. And Mr. Hampton, please can you make any record of further amendments? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair and members. Can I just refer you to item 6 on the agenda? Apologies, Chairman, which is public issues. We don't have any public issues this evening. So if you can just, if you're happy to just record that there are no public issues for this meeting. And Councillor Stribby, can I just go back on the minutes? Because I'd hate to amend those incorrectly, but we had a nominated substitute for you at that meeting. So I think we must have had notification of your apology for that meeting. Councillor Kelly was in attendance on your behalf. But I think we did receive formal notification, so okay. So you must have been very poorly. Chairman, members, if I can take you through very short introduction to the paper. Members will recall that we considered the model code from the LGA at the meeting in April and recommended that for adoption at council in June. That was duly approved by council. However, following the adoption of it, we identified a number of anomalies or ambiguity within the code, and subsequently received notice in late September from the LGA advising that they had updated the model code but not given notice to local authorities, and they apologised for that omission. So the paper before you tonight is bringing back the changes that the LGA have identified, and they are detailed in Appendix 1 to the report, with track changes showing. So deleted text is shown in red with a strike through, and new text is shown in red with underlining. Before I go through that, those changes though, or particularly those changes, I would like just to refer to, I include details of training on the new code, and this was clearly an important issue that members raised at the last meeting. I refer in the report to some provisional dates in early November. Those dates have now been confirmed, and all members have been notified of those dates and been asked to indicate which date they will be attending. So that is work in progress. In addition to that, the LGA have provided guidance on the new model code. That's on the website only. It's not a downloadable document, but it's very user-friendly on their website, and the link is included within the body of the report. And they've also indicated that they will be providing training material or content in due course, although we don't have a timescale. So because we don't know the timescale, we're going to continue with our in-house training in early November. So anything that the LGA provide will be complementary to the training that we deliver. Okay. I was going to say there's a question. Councillor Ricketts is indicating to speak. Chair.
Councillor Ricketts.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a little bit concerned that the training is being done remotely. I think for a start, the members of this committee, because of the responsibility that we have on reviewing complaints, should certainly have face-to-face training. And I think that should be made available to members too. Unfortunately, with a lot of training, when it's remote, it's very easy for members to perhaps go off and make a cup of tea while appearing to still be in training. There is that ability to blank your screen. Are you actually paying attention? I think this is really important training, and to be honest, I'm quite surprised that it's being done remotely.
Councillor Stripley.
Chairman, I would agree with that point of view. I've already sent in a comment that I think training should be face-to-face. Not necessarily for the reasons just given, but it enables the participants to have that better communication between and ask minor questions, which you can't necessarily do on these virtual meetings. And by the time you get to your questions, you've either forgotten it or other things have moved. I would certainly support face-to-face training wherever possible.
Richard?
Chairman, if I can then say, I'm more than happy to deliver that training. The only facility we do have is in this room, so there's limited to 20 participants at a time, so we'd need to look at other dates. I am conscious, though, that some members are still apprehensive about attending large gatherings, so I think we would still have to offer remote attendance for anybody who wished to do that. So we can certainly deliver that. I'm more than happy to come in on those particular dates and sit in here. We can update the invitations to members and indicate that it would be open to attendance. I can also, I guess if there's a general feeling here that you'd encourage attendance, physical attendance, then we can certainly send that message out. I think that's certainly no one's shaking their heads in that view, so we can certainly update that. We would need to deliver further training sessions though, because we couldn't get all of the 76 covered in 3 sessions.
Sorry, Mr. Jones, would it be a hybrid meeting then? We would have virtual and physical?
It would technically be a hybrid training session.
Thank you. Councillor Ricketts?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to come back on that, would you support me in requesting that the members of this committee should endeavour to have face-to-face training, perhaps separately from other members, because of the detail that we need to go in when reviewing members, when we're reviewing complaints from members? I think we probably need a little bit more detailed training than the general training that is going to be handed out to the other members.
I would support that, but Mr. James, would you come in on that one?
Again, we're more than happy to arrange that as a physical training session for the Standards Committee members.
Councillor Andrews?
Through you, Chairman, would it be appropriate to propose that as that this committee seeks to have face-to-face training for its members and perhaps also for the independent members as well?
Again, there's recommendations coming back, but obviously you can add that as a recommendation. I think we would pursue that anyway. I think you could take that from officers that we would arrange a training session that's a physical training session for you on your behalf.
Chairman, if I may come in as an independent.
Yes, sorry, Ian. Mr.
Chairman, does it have to be at Poole? It's a long way to travel, and certainly 6 o'clock in the evening for a start time is very difficult for traffic.
Yes, I understand that it is difficult to get to certain sites. I don't know whether we'll be able to accommodate that, Mr. James.
Adding to that, they're shortly starting to do major works on Commercial Road, and the east-west route, especially at rush hour times, will be nigh on impossible. It will at least double people's travelling times to get here. The work starts in November. There'll be a break before Christmas, and then it'll run on into the new year, and they're going to dig up most of Commercial Road, which is the main road from here through Lower Parkstone.
Mr. James? Sorry, Councillor Andrews, apologies.
Yeah, no, it's right. The point I was getting back to was, I think we've done historically training sessions where all members have been invited, and that's face-to-face ones, whereby we actually haven't had a full attendance. With this remote thing, we're not going to get all 75, 76 councillors, attending. What I would like is, I know there are regular, I think weekly or bi-weekly meetings of the group leaders with Richard and other officers, whereby the message can go back through the group leaders or their deputies, whoever is attending, that it should be made compulsory with the groups who can administer such a thing, that their members should attend the remote meetings. They've got a choice of 3 at 3 different times of the day. Potentially, if somebody is sick, COVID or whatever, we could have another one perhaps in December to sweep up. People have holidays, etc., etc. But, I think we should be pressing for as far as possible, complete attendance. And yeah, I would support Councillor Ricketts on the suggestion that the members and the independent members of the committee have a face-to-face training. It might actually help when there are criticisms of our decisions by some councillors that we don't know what we're doing, that we can actually say, well, we've had training from the LGA and we do know what we're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Richard.
Sorry, Councillor Borthwick.
Councillor Borthwick.
Yeah. Could I suggest a Saturday mornings, because people work and they may be free on a Saturday morning, and plus the traffic will be lighter. Just as additional access to the councillors.
I think there is an evening meeting on one of the days, I believe, Mr. Jones.
There's nothing like a Saturday morning, though, which you can, you know, you're not talking about hours and hours. We're talking a couple of hours, aren't we, Richard? Face to face. Someone picks it.
Chairman, weekends would be very unusual for officers to attend training sessions, so I think that would be a very unusual circumstance. Clearly, there are certain events that can only take place at the weekends, but I think we are offering a reasonable options of time, day, morning, afternoon and evening for the 3 training sessions. I think in terms of the physical meeting for the committee, we can certainly look at an alternative location that wouldn't be a hybrid environment. So we can look at alternative locations, although clearly with the accommodation improvements taking place, that may be limited, and we will need to come back to members on that particular option. For the hybrid style training sessions, then the only option we actually do have at the current stage is this committee suite. So for the 3 sessions that we've got scheduled, they'd have to be here plus hybrid, but we can certainly look at an alternative fixed location for the committee.
Councillor Ricketts.
Thank you, Chairman. Through you, could I please suggest that perhaps an email with suggested dates which are suitable for the monitoring officer and perhaps for Mr. Jones and whoever else needs to be delivering the training can be sent to us as members, and we can agree that via email rather than debating it any further here. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Ricketts. Yes, I think that is suggestible. We'll get the email round and get some dates. Thank you. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Chairman. I think if I can now continue with the changes that are proposed, they are set out, as I said, in the appendices to the report. However, since the publication of the agenda, we've examined some of the issues a little bit further, and there are 2 further amendments that are not recommended by the LGA, but we believe are errors in their drafting, which again would suggest some ambiguity. So I'm not intending to go through all of those proposed changes by members. That will be clearly open for debate and discussion by you subsequently. But if I can just make these 2 further suggestions. So the first one would be on page 22 of your pack, and it's the first paragraph at the top of page 22. Just give you a moment to locate that. The first paragraph at the top of page 22. The final sentence reads currently, you should also register details of your other personal interests which fall within the categories set out in table 2 in brackets other registrable interests. That paragraph refers to other personal interests. Personal interest has been removed from the code in every other existence, and is not defined within the code. We believe that is a drafting error and should actually say other registrable interests. So the paragraph would then read, you should also register details of your other registrable interests which fall within the category set out in table 2, other registrable interests. Otherwise it creates that ambiguity. So that's the first. On the very last sentence of the first paragraph, it's the word personal in that very last sentence that should be replaced with registrable. Yeah. And the second change, I'm just trying to find my note and reference, is on page 23, the subsequent page, paragraph 9. I'll just give a few moments to scroll down. Okay, and in that first sentence of paragraph 9, it's got a sentence and then it's got an A and a B. The first sentence refers to, I'm not going to read it in full, but refers to financial interest or well-being. but the conditional subparagraph A only refers to financial interests. So since that is a comparison between those two criteria, we believe that that A should actually read financial interests and well-being. So it's then consistent with that comparative for the opening sentence. Okay.
Councillor Eckert.
Sorry, Mr. Jones. With regard to 8B on that page, my copy here from our intranet is showing that you are removing the word friend. So a known financial interest or well-being of a friend, strikeout, relative or close associate. I take it that you're thinking that a friend is a close associate, and that's why friend is being removed. Although I'm a little bit concerned about that, to be honest. I'd rather see friend left in.
Mr. Jones.
The changes that are in the document at the moment in red are all recommended by the LGA. So I've lifted them all. It is for you. It is your code, ultimately. You could accept those changes, or you could actually make modifications. Clearly, your previous view has been that we wish to have a model, we wish to adopt the code as far as practicable, and we only made one change previously. You remember that was in relation to adding the word known, interest of relatives and so on. So you would be deviating from the model code, but technically I'm recommending that you're deviating anyway with these two further amendments. As I said, yes, I haven't got any further information, but it is a recommendation from the LGA.
Chairman, I'm happy to support leaving in the word friend. I think it adds. Sorry, switch that off. We don't necessarily accept them as the same person. People I work with, I would say, are close associates and friends, but I have other people who are simply personal friends, and it wouldn't occur to me to think of them as close associates.
Mr. Jones.
Chairman, as I said, I'm happy for you to make your changes as you wish. I think on that point as well, it was a question. Relative is not defined, and actually the LGA have clarified that particular point, that actually families are all very different, and therefore family makeups vary significantly. So somebody may have a family member or a relative that they associate with very closely and know that individual's personal interests or interests, but not necessarily other relatives. So I think actually friend and close associate, absolutely. I think you can leave the word friend in.
So Ms. Seiss.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, unfortunately, my screen is freezing from time to time. I'm not sure how you're finding the hub to be functioning at the moment. But I just wanted to add on the question of friend, I think the concern was that could be very widely interpreted and quite difficult to define. So, happy to support whatever the committee decides, but I think that was probably the concern when removing it from the definition. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Seiss. Mr. James, you want to continue with your report? Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, going back to the word relative, obviously in the world that we live in nowadays, there's lots of people who live together, cohabit, aren't married. So technically, legally, they're not really a relative. So I think having the word friend in will help explain, certainly to members, that, it could be your lodger, it could be, whatever. I think it will help. Okay, it goes further and is more extensive than what the local government association is recommending, but I think it will help to the situation that if a particular councillor tries to wriggle out because they said, well, I know they were a friend, but that's not in the rules, then, it will be clearer. I think it will actually benefit to retain the word friend personally.
Mr. James.
Again, that's in your gift, Chairman, when you come to debating the item and moving a recommendation. I was just going to really just finish off my introduction, then probably leave it for you to debate those particular issues. So obviously the recommendations are set out on page 9. recommending to change the constitution as you feel fit with those changes set out in Appendix 1. I'm getting the impression that you wish to leave the word friend in it. I would ask you to consider those two further amendments that I've referenced. That recommendation A would be a recommendation to full council, so council needs to approve the code of conduct from a recommendation from this committee. B and C are then set out, and B is in relation to noting the guidance that's available on the LGA website, and C is in terms of the flow chart. So again, I haven't referenced that flow chart. It's set out in Appendix 2 on page 27 of your pack. I think it's a more simple process to follow to assist members in determining whether they have an interest to declare and the action they should take. And if you were supportive of adopting that, we could replace the existing flowchart on the back of all the front sheets with the one from the LGA. So I was going to say I'm happy to answer any questions, but we've clearly answered questions as we've gone along, but happy to answer any further questions, Chairman.
Councillor Stribley.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one, and being picky, I'm sorry. Paragraph 9 again, the end of the first line, it says delete the word your and put in the. Where a matter referred to above affects the financial interest of well-being to a greater extent, it doesn't quite make sense. I think it should remain as your financial well-being.
Mr. Jones.
Chair, if I can just refer, that paragraph refers to the interests referred to in section 8. And section 8 includes the interests of a body to which you may be a member or have management control. So it's not your interest, it's the interest of the body in that case. So that's the reason they've replaced your with the, because it could be your own interest, but it would still be the interest referenced in A above, as well as the body.
Councillor Andrews.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I'm happy perhaps for that simplified flowchart to appear. I think obviously it would be useful, like on the current flowchart, I think at the bottom of the page there is like a link to the monitoring officer, and potentially noting that there is this online guidance for councillors on the model code, particularly since most people, not me, go online to look at these papers, that if perhaps that link can appear at the foot of the flowchart, it will enable us, particularly where somebody said, well, I didn't know, you can say, well, look, there was a link. You could have clicked on the link halfway through the meeting and discovered that what you did was incorrect. So if that link could be squeezed in at the bottom, as well as the email link for one to fire off a quick email to the monitoring officer, I think that will help. But yeah, I think that is a more simplified flowchart, which may enable people to follow things through. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James.
Chairman, more than happy to incorporate that link. The intention would be to leave the Nolan principle still on that page, so we would keep the wider aspects of it, including the link at the bottom to the monitoring officer, and we can certainly include a link to the guidance on the LGA website.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. I probably should know this, or I've missed it on the page, but I just wondered if there was a definition there of what a financial well-being is. Does it mean financial security? What is the sort of definition of that? Because it's not very obvious.
Mr. James.
Again, Chairman, that's probably all included in the guidance on the LGA website, actually, and that will form part of our training that we deliver to members. But there are definitions throughout the guidance on all sorts of aspects relating to it, and there's certainly financial interest and well-being is in there. But forgive me, I haven't got that right here in front of me, so I can't read that out.
Okay.
Any of the independents want to ask any questions?
Thank you, Chairman. Nothing from me.
Sorry, back to Councillor.
No, either. Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Andrews.
A very, very quick point. Obviously, we as a committee are under obligation occasionally to police the parish councils that come within the BCP council area. Obviously, those parish councils have all, like us, probably adopted the model code back in the summer, and now we've got this new model code to adopt. Obviously, subject to it going through our full council, we should be particularly contacting the town clerks, the various parish councils and town councils to say that there is this updated model code, and this is the one that we want you each individually to adopt, because obviously if there is an indiscretion from a parish councillor that comes in front of us, we want to be judging them on these rules and not a different set of rules. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. James. Sorry, Mrs. Ice.
Mr. Jones may have wanted to come in before me, but I wanted to emphasise the fact that it is useful to have a common code across the county. And in fact, I had discussions with the my monitoring officer counterpart at Dorset Council, who is also clerk to the Combined Fire Authority, which includes Swindon and other counties, and we were all very keen to have the same code. So I think it would be useful for us to make sure that we can't obviously dictate to them whether or not they make these amendments that we're making now, but I think consistency is a very valuable thing to have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ice. Ms. Jones, you
Certainly, after you've made your deliberations this evening and decide on what you would be recommended to council, we can certainly be in touch with the chief executive of DAPTC, who is working with all of the parish and town councils across Dorset to advise them of your view, and I can certainly write to the clerks to each of the parish and town councils within the BCP area to advise them of your current position, although it's obviously still subject to full council approval.
Thank you.
So, Chairman, I think obviously you've got the recommendations set out on page 9 of your agenda, A, B and C. Obviously, A would need to incorporate the further changes or any other further changes that you wish to make. I think it's the two that I've proposed and outlined in my introduction, plus the retention of the word friend, I think, so far.
Councillor Stripley.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to support those amendments we've already discussed. I have a couple of other points on table 1, which is page 25. Under the paragraph headed sponsorship on the left, the last line should have a space between Labour and relations. And at the bottom of that page, I think it's bottom same page, yes, it is the last one, licenses, is spelt with a CES, because you're referring to the license, not the activity. So I have my red pen out, as you see. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Stripley. I'm sure we'll make those amendments. Anything else from Mr. James?
No, I think we can pick up typographical errors. We'll pick up.
On this one.
Sorry, Councillor Ricketts.
Yeah, just to say that I'm happy to support those and second that recommendation as well, with the amendments made by Councillor Stripley and those that we've agreed as this discussion has taken place.
Thank you, Councillor Ricketts. All those in favour? Unanimous? Thank you. So we move on to agenda item 8, Code of Conduct Complaints Review. This report provides the committee with an update on the progress of all complaints to date and asks the committee to consider the next steps, including a potential report to the council about the role and status of standards at BCP Council. Mr. James, please can you take us through the report? Thank you.
Again, thank you, Chairman. So again, I'll briefly run through the report. It's effectively in 2 parts, and I think if I can deal with the first part initially, which provides you with the standard, I think isn't forgive me the word, but the standard update that we provide to you as a committee on the progress of existing complaints. That shows those that have been completed since the last meeting, and then new or ongoing complaints since that meeting as well. So the table set out in section 6 of the report provides you the anonymised list of complaints, the nature of the allegations, the latest position, the outcome, decision, and the status of those complaints. Again, just to remind you that we delete those that were shown as completed on the previous report from your schedule, so you have the latest up-to-date position. You'll note that 6 complaints have been closed since the last meeting, and a further 8 are either ongoing or have been received since your last meeting as part of that list. So recommendation A is to note the position of those complaints. That brings us on to the second part of the report, and you alluded to this, Chairman, in your introduction, set out from section 7 onwards. And the committee will note that there are 5 complaints where the subject councillor has refused to comply with the decision of the chair and the recommended informal remedy that was proposed. Some of these complaints have remained unresolved for some considerable time, which some have expressed is undermining the role and standing of the Standards Committee and the processes. The table at paragraph 13 of the report provides you with further details of those 5 complaints, including key dates of receipt and other actions. I must stress, though, that all of these complaints were received or the alleged offence occurred under the old Code of Conduct. So the new code requires councillors now to comply with sanctions recommended or following an investigation, but these all were received and all occurred prior to that new code being adopted. The committee is therefore requested to determine the next course of action. The report sets out in section 15 4 options for you to consider. You obviously may have your own thoughts on another option, but option 1, do nothing. Option 2, continue to try to resolve the complaints. 3, instruct every complaint under the Code of Conduct to independent and external investigation. Or 4, report the position of non-compliance to full council. Recommendation B on page 29 leaves this option open to you as a committee, so we're not recommending as officers which option to move forward with. So it is for you to determine the next steps. Again, myself or the monitoring officer will be happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Ms. Seiss?
Chairman, I didn't request to speak. Was there any particular question?
I thought you wanted to come in. Apologies.
No, beg your pardon. No, not at this point, but happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I open up the floor for any questions. Councillor Stribley?
Thank you, Chairman. It is very difficult to know whether or not at times the Standards Committee has teeth, and it should have. If it is felt that some action should be taken and that is just refused by the person complained about, it seems our only reasonable option is reporting in full to full council. At that point, is the councillor concerned in the complaint named? That's really, because otherwise, if you're saying Councillor X has behaved badly, there doesn't seem to be any point in it.
Ms. Seiss, do you want to come in on this one, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, Councillor Stribley, I think you are right in saying that it would have the greatest impact if that councillor were to be named. But we have received representations that one of the councillors, if not 2, has received death threats in connection with some of the complaints we are investigating, and that there has been some concern expressed about publicising the name of that councillor through that process for fear that more death threats might result. It is a conundrum because I'm not sure how this committee would go forward necessarily with a report that doesn't, except I guess it could give a general message that there are a certain number of councillors who are not agreeing or complying with the decision of standards, and that in itself might be a fairly powerful message. But that's something that the committee would need to consider. Chairman, if I may ask your indulgence. I just have a very short update about the progress of the two that are subject to independent investigation in case it aids the committee to know the timeline. I was speaking to the independent investigator for complaints numbers. Now I'm going to be put to the test here. Complaints numbers 39 and 40, and that report will probably be ready within a week. And complaints number 21 and 22 will be ready by the end of this month. So I hope that assists the committee in their deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sice, for that update. Thank you very much. I'll go back to Councillor Stripley.
Thank you, and thank you, Ms. Sice, for that explanation. I was concerned about that, but surely then this committee has the power to report under confidential to full council. So although it wouldn't be a matter for the public, all members of the council would be aware. And really my other question is, does this committee have any powers to recommend a short-term suspension of a couple of weeks or a month or whatever as a councillor? I doubt that we do, but it would be a good thing if it were possible in serious cases.
Chairman, if I may, through you.
Yes, Ms. Sice.
Councillor Stribley, yes, that the option to provide that information in an exempt report is definitely one that is available to us and you and council. Unfortunately, no, the standards committees have not been given the same powers that the old standards boards had of applying a suspension of either allowances or a suspension of the ability to vote and so on. But the groups do still retain, the political groups do still retain some authority within their own rules to enable them to suspend their own members for a period of time. And I've seen that work extremely successfully in other authorities where that member would be required to sit somewhere else in the chamber, perhaps for 1 or 2 meetings, and soon perhaps wanted to be back within their group and had the desired effect. But unfortunately, standards is not at liberty to make that requirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sice.
That's a pity. It would be great in the council chamber if in effect we could have a naughty chair for somebody who hadn't complied, but if we don't, we don't. Thank you.
I'd like to get Councillor Ricketts, please. She's been waiting patiently.
Thank you. I'm bitterly disappointed to see that, you know, we've got cases here that have been outstanding for over a year with refusal to comply. It undermines the authority of this committee. I think that we need to be robust in this, and therefore I was going to propose that option 4 would be the right way forward. However, I'm also concerned about the public naming and shaming of councillors for the reasons given by the monitoring officer. And it was actually going to be my suggestion that this be done in confidential session, but that a recommendation be made that those members, if they are members of political groups, that the political groups consider whether they wish to impose sanctions. That we as a standards committee cannot. Again, as the monitoring officer said, I think it's very unfortunate that these days we cannot impose those sanctions to remove members from committees if they have been found in breach. I don't think that any of the other 3 options are really going to give credence to this committee. I think that we need to be seen to be strong, and we need to be seen to be making sure that these members are brought to account, and hopefully then it can be minuted that when it comes to council that X number of members were cited as having been in breach and have not complied with the requests of the committee, so that then at least there will be a public minute to say that, you know, this committee is actually taking action. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Andrews.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, obviously, political groups may have some written rules. Some political groups within the BCP may not have anything particularly written down, but rules can probably be constituted.
Thank you. Councillor Borthwick.
Yes, in the old Bournemouth Council, we did have one case where we suspended the use of the council's equipment, which made it very difficult. They were able to do their job, but without the council computer. And of course, we've got better council computers now. So I think that type of thing would really upset somebody, and it needn't be public knowledge. You know, if we do it confidentially and just suspend their use of council equipment.
Ms. Ice.
What would you like me? Would you like me to advise on that point, Chairman?
Could you advise on Councillor Borthwick's? Yes, please.
Yes. So Councillor Borthwick, I am aware that that has happened in the past, but that's not something that I would recommend, because I think with the way we work at the moment, it would be really hampering a councillor's ability to do their work if they were, for example, denied access to their council email address. So that is not, while I understand it might be inconvenient for the councillor, I don't think it's the right way to go about the reprimand, and I think it might be challengeable.
Thank you. Councillor Borthwick.
I didn't propose to make it easy.
Thank you. Do any of the independents have any questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Ricketts, apologies.
Thank you. Sorry, it's the old monitoring officer in me keeps coming out. I was going to suggest that if that was the route that was taken, it would actually be the residents that would be sanctioned, because they wouldn't be able to contact their ward councillors and their queries wouldn't be answered. So it certainly wouldn't be something that I could support.
Thank you.
Chairman, yes, thank you. We are where we are. We're stuck with a system that doesn't allow any, for the reasons put forward by the monitoring officer, any naming of these people. I think the monitoring officer ought to be supported with her suggestion that maybe we go forward with anonymity, albeit that's hardly acceptable to the majority of people, I would suggest. But we've got to do something, and it has to be option 4, albeit anonymously.
Councillor Stripley.
I guess I could support that. The public report would have to be anonymous, but I do think there should be a confidential paper, an exempt paper for the council, so that everyone is aware of who is, if you like, setting themselves above the rest or totally disregarding the Standards Committee, because these decisions are not lightly made, and going through many of them, that's the way it is. So I think we should perhaps do both: a public report saying Councillor X has failed to respond or apologise or whatever, and that should be detailed in a confidential report to all councillors.
Mrs. Ice, can you come to that, please?
Yes, that is an acceptable way forward should the committee choose to do that, Chair.
Thank you. Any more questions, anyone?
I would certainly support
Councillor.
Councillor Stribley's recommendation.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, Chairman, I think that was then, can I just confirm that's a proposition that those, yeah, and that was seconded by Councillor Ricketts, that a report is presented to Council with an exempt appendix detailing the identity of the complaints by reference to the complaint number. And then the first part is just to note the position of all the other outstanding complaints.
Chairman, if I may, oh, sorry.
Sorry, Councillor Ricketts.
Thank you, Chairman. Could we also make a suggestion in the confidential report that goes to Council that we recommend that the group leaders seek further apology from those members that have been deemed to be in breach, so that it actually goes back to the I know we can't insist on it, but perhaps a recommendation in that confidential report could be that group leaders speak to those members who are in breach to bring them to account.
Councillor Stribley. Councillor Stribley.
What happens if the group leader is the subject of the complaint?
Ms Silas, could you come in on this, please? Thank you.
Mr. Sibley, did you want to say something before I speak?
Thank you.
Apologies, Mrs.
No, I just wanted to really make the point that Councillor Ricketts has just made, that added to the proposal that was put in, we include the reference to the leaders of the various parties. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then, sorry.
Ms Silas, yes.
Beg your pardon, Chair. Okay, two things on this. First of all, we as officers need to be extremely careful about making suggestions for politicians in the political world and in the context of their group arrangements. So I don't feel as monitoring officer that it would be appropriate for a report that's going under my name for me to suggest what a group leader should do within his group. I feel that that should be dealt with amongst you as elected members. If you feel that you, Chair, for example, with the support of the committee, would like to write to the group leaders to make that suggestion, I would feel more comfortable with that than me putting it in my monitoring officer's report, because I certainly cannot dictate to group leaders or even request to group leaders what they might wish to do in the political world. The second point that I needed to make was that if the investigation reports that come back that are due possibly before we next go to full council have the consequence of those particular members who have hitherto declined to apologise, in fact, apologising. I'm not predetermining the outcome of those reports. I've no idea what they're going to say, but they will be sent to the complainants as well as those making the complaints. I mean, those complained of, and if that results in apologies being made before full council, perhaps that can be reported at the same time. We'll just have to see how we go along, but I think that might also be a positive outcome.
Thank you, Ms Silas. I think we can support that. So everyone content there? Yes. Yes. Yeah. Mr. Is that okay? Yeah.
Chairman, I think just for the clarity for Bob, probably for the official records, if you could just ask if all members are in agreement with the proposal as proposed by Councillor Stribley and seconded by Councillor Ricketts.
But Chairman, just to clarify that that's not including the suggestion about the report referring to the group leaders.
Yes. Full report. Full report to council and an exempt report identifying the individuals involved.
And everyone's in agreement there. Oh, Councillor Drew, sorry.
Can I just ask a question? On these complaints which are unresolved, do the group leaders actually know that one of their members or two of their members are steadfastly refusing to comply with Standards Committee, or are they unaware completely of what's going on, that somebody in their group has an outstanding complaint, because I think if I was a group leader or deputy group leader, I would probably want to know. So I think the group leaders should know what's going on, because that's the whole point of a group leader, that they lead and, if necessary, discipline their members.
You have a very good point there. Mrs. Ellis, could you come in on that one for me, please?
Councillor Andrews, I can confirm that the group leaders are aware.
Thank you. Councillor Ricketts.
Could I please then suggest that as for the minutes as well, that as the monitoring officer suggested, that you, Chairman, after council and after this has been noted, then write to the group leader seeking that they discipline their members as they see fit.
I think we can take that through, yes. Yeah. All in favour? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you. And I will now close the meeting of the Standards Committee. Thank you for all for attending. The meeting is now closed.